Hey guys, what's up? It's Iflin here, and today we're going to be talking about Gauss. I'm going to be showing off my build for him and giving you guys a little demonstration on how I play Gauss. Now, Gauss was a frame that I was looking forward to playing since my break, but I'm not going to lie, he's kind of let me down a little bit because I thought that modding him was going to be, a little bit more, I don't know, in depth. Like there would have been more detail to it, but unfortunately, that's not the case. And a lot of the builds that I've seen on YouTube and whatnot, they've turned out to be like pretty much the exact same. Like I think the only difference between my build and Brozeim's build is the fact that I opted for more duration, where he opted for a little bit more range and sacrificed a little bit of duration. So, I don't know. I was disappointed about the whole modding thing, but other than that, he's an alright frame. He's definitely not my top 10 or anywhere near it, but he's a fun frame to play. I'll give them that. So, Gauss is meant to be a speedster frame. I still prefer Volt over Gauss, and that's for a very obvious reason. I just don't think that is one sort of compares to speed in any way, shape, or form. It's a cool ability, yeah, but I feel like it is made more for open worlds rather than it is for your standard tile sets within Warframe. One of my biggest complaints with it is the fact that you have to hold down one to use it or to make the ability be active instead of just like being a toggle ability, right? So if I could tap one and it would just stay on until I tapped it again, that would be a lot better. Now, the reason that this is troublesome for me is simply because like I can't take my finger off of my one key down to my A key if I wanted to turn left with the ability, right? So like turning right is fine, but turning left for me is problematic, Like I can't turn to the left because I just can't remove my finger from that one key. So, there's that. That's a big problem, at least in my opinion. But other than that, the rest of his kit, it's pretty well thought out, I would say, apart from the modding. So his second ability, basically damage reduction. There's no reason not to have it on. Third ability is a damage dealing ability, which can be toggled between fire damage, cold damage, and also blast damage whenever you combine the two. So if you tap it, it's cold damage. If you hold it down, it's fire damage. And what that does, it affects that little meter on the right. And that meter on the right is very, very, very important because it's basically going to determine how effective your stat boosts on your 4 and your 2 are going to be, right? So the higher this gauge is, then the better your boosts on your 4 and the better the damage reduction is on your 2. So you want to make sure that this gauge is as high as possible. Now, the fastest way to build this gauge is, without a doubt, just spamming your 1, right? So you can see that we put on a pretty hefty amount whenever we just press our 1, and it's basically at max. Now, whenever we go ahead and we press our 4, you can build it even further, right? So it goes over that little red line, and it's got a percentage there, and we have to just keep on spamming our 1 to build it up, and then whenever we get to 100%, that's whenever we're going to be at like our maximum potential, right? So our stat bonuses are going to be as high as they can possibly be based on the build that we have. We're also going to be able to strip away armor with our third ability. Now, I didn't invest too much into the armor strip simply because I just don't think that it's necessary, right? It's cool that he has it, but I don't think it's worth modding around simply because there's other ways to strip enemy armor in this game, such as corrosive rejection and just other warframes that have like better augments and stuff like that, which makes stripping away armor from enemies a lot easier. That and we have the corrosive status effect and all that there type of stuff. There's just better ways to do it, right? So I didn't invest too heavily into range for that simple fact that I didn't think it was worth it. I'd rather have the extra duration to increase the stats. And that's what I don't like about the modding this guy. To increase the stats on your fourth ability, like the bonuses that you get, so that fire rate, attack speed, reload speed, and holster speed bonus, you gotta throw on duration. Now, I can only assume that they did this for balancing purposes, but like you would assume, based on like all the other warframes that you have built in this game, that those types of stats would be affected by power strength. But that's not the case. It's duration, and I can easily demonstrate that just by, going into a new modding thing, like a blank one, showing you guys the stats, right? And then throwing on the Minded. right? Check it out. And then, you know, those all get increased. So, you know, kind of weird. You can increase the minimum amount of damage reduction you have on your second ability by throwing on Power Strength. So if we throw on Blind Rage, you see that the minimum changes from 20 up to 40 with Blind Rage on, right? So it only increases the minimum amount of damage reduction that you can have rather than increasing the maximum, because whenever you are at 100 with that gauge on the right when you're using your fourth ability, you're going to get that 100% damage reduction regardless. So, you know, it's a really good ability. It's really good damage reduction. There's not a lot I can say about that other than I think it's weird that, you know, throwing duration mods on is what increases the stats of the 4, because it makes it so, like, everybody's build is more or less the exact same, you know, where we just heap a bunch of duration on, and then we can throw power range on if we want to. So I opted not to, but a lot of other builds that I've seen have thrown on power range, and that's because you can do the armor strip with your third ability whenever you're hitting that 100% on that little meter, right? So, you know, other than that, he shines whenever he's got all of his buffs up, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to spawn in our level 110 Corrupted Heavy Gunners. I'm going to keep them paused. Actually, no, you know, we'll unpause them, and we'll keep our invincibility off. And basically what we have to do, we hit our 2, we hit our 4, we build up the percentage on that little meter. So we just have to keep on spamming our 1 until we hit 100%. We don't even necessarily have to hit 100%. But, like, whenever you hit that 100%, that's whenever you're going to be at, like, max potential. And then what we can do is we can just start to, you know, lay into the enemies, right? So our attack speed on our melee is increased. Our fire rate on all of our weapons are increased. Our reload speed is increased. So, like, he's an insanely fun frame for just, like, buffing yourself up and going around and dealing crazy damage. That's implying you're paying attention to your timers, like the duration of your abilities. And then making sure that they're always up, and making sure that that meter stays as high as possible as well. So, you know, constantly spamming your 1 to dash between, you know, enemy to enemy, and just, you know, laying into them with your melee or your shotgun or whatever you happen to be using. So, in my opinion, he's like a close quarters frame, but because of how finicky the 1 is, at least in my opinion, it makes him kind of awkward to navigate around the small tile sets that we have in this game. Like, especially the ship tile sets, right? Like, whenever you're in the ships, you're just going to be, like, running into stuff all over the show, you know? So it makes him a little bit awkward to play. In open worlds, I can see him being a lot better. But, of course, then there's other frames that you would bring into an open world mission or a bounty or whatever to get it done more efficiently, right? And there's other ways to get around as well, such as Arcwing with your blinks and stuff like that. Of course, you can do crazy stuff with Gauss, like you can pair his first ability with Volt Speed and the Wisp buff and stuff like that to make him, like, insanely fast with his 1, because his 1 goes off your sprint speed rather than your power strength as well. Another weird decision, at least in my opinion. You know, whenever you compare him to Volt, at least, like, you'd think that throwing on Power Strength would make him a little bit more competitively viable with Volt. But, you know, he's definitely more of a fun frame who's got, like, all these insane stat buffs, which makes it so he's able to hold his own versus those high-level enemies. But he doesn't do anything necessarily spectacular, right? So he can hold his own, but he's not one of those frames that I would say, oh yeah, we need to bring a Gauss to our, you know, wave 100 defense or anything like that. You know, he's just one of those fun, casual, fun to play frames, I guess you could say. So overall, I think he's really just fun to play. Disappointed with how you go about modding him. Adaptation is basically a must. I went for the full duration, as I've mentioned before. I've completely handicapped myself whenever it comes to any amount of range, because, you know, I just don't think that the armor stripping is worth modding into. Like, the armor stripping, what you have to do is you activate your 4 and your 2, of course, and then you run around with your 1 to build up that little gauge. And then once that gauge hits 100, you gotta walk up to the enemies. we spawn them in again. You gotta walk up to the enemies, and then you have to tap your free, and then you need to hold down your free to combine the ice damage and the fire damage. And then that's gonna make the blast damage, which is gonna make it so that the enemy has their armor stripped. So that's just how it is with this guy. But we're gonna go ahead and wait for our gauge to get 100 there. So then we tap and we hold, and then you see he's got no armor, right? So you can do the exact same thing, and then you can see the sort of radius or the range that I'm rocking. Totally handicapping myself whenever it comes to that third ability, but you can use that third ability, like you can put on more power range if you really want to what's it called, to level your Gauss up quick, right? So you can throw on power strength, power range to spam your third ability to deal as much damage as you can with Gauss, just to, you know, get his levels up initially. But then once you hit like max rank, I would say it's not really worth it. So, you know, that's Gauss. I think is a fun, cool frame to play around with whenever it comes to the likes of, you know, running around in the open world or running around in a survival mission or something like that. But outside of that, I wouldn't be using him, and I wouldn't say that he is in any way, shape, or form like comparable to Volt whenever it comes to that whole, you know, using speed to get a mission done very, very fast. Of course, you can definitely do it. Like, you can, you know, jump into the air and tap your one to get that boost, and arguably that could be faster, but I just think that it feels rather awkward, and I'd rather the smooth movement that Volt offers, or at least the smooth movement that I've become accustomed to over the years of playing, that I can achieve with Volt and his speed ability, because my Volt build is really, really, really insane whenever it comes to speed. So just to sort of compare what I'm used to, we go with my Volt. Which one is it? Is this one? Don't worry, I don't use this hideous fashion frame. And then, you know, my speed builds, if you listen carefully, are you able to hear the, if I can get it to work. You can hear it for a split second, but you can hear the sort of like flying through the air sound effect just as I'm sprinting with my speed build. So I always find that pretty amusing. You can basically do the exact same thing with less effort with Volt. It's just you're less tanky. So he's kind of like a Volt, but he's more tanky, I guess. So check it out, you know. I've still got that crazy attack speed. I just don't have the fire rate buff in the Corinth, and I don't have the damage reduction on the second ability. So that's sort of what you're comparing whenever it comes to the fight between Gauss and Volt. And personally, like, if we're just comparing complete speed alone, I would choose Volt over Gauss any day. But whenever it comes to you know, overall, who has a more fun kit, would probably go to Gauss, right? Like, he's just more fun to play in the likes of Survival, Plains of Eidolon, or Valis, etc. So, yeah. Gauss is a fun frame, not necessarily a practical frame, in my opinion. He's got the damage reduction, he's got the buffs, which makes him more practical, but there's other frames out there who do what he does just that bit better in a more practical sense. So, yeah, pick him up if you want to. You get him from Disruption missions. He just wasn't my cup of tea. Sort of disappointed me a little bit. But, yeah, the next frame review video that we're going to be doing is Grendel. I haven't actually looked at him at all yet. But, yeah, we're going to jump in and look at Grendel in the next video. So thank you guys for watching this one. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button below. If you disliked it, go ahead, hit dislike. Subscribe for more Warframe content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.